Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking about my identity development as a Mexican American woman. So both of my parents were born in Mexico. My dad was born in Monterrey and my mom was born in Matamoros. My dad's family came here in the 60s where they went to Bakersfield, California to work on the ranches. They mostly work with cattle and dairy. My mother's family came here in the 80s, and my mom came here to help my grandparents work in Houston. I was born in Houston, and just outside of Houston, actually, so kind of in the Greenspoint area. I grew up there, and during that time, it was mostly Hispanic. So my classmates were Hispanic. We shopped at stores and restaurants that were Hispanic, and I played softball a lot, and my teammates were Hispanic. So speaking Spanish was an absolute must. I was not ashamed of my culture in any way because I was never given a reason to be ashamed. And if anything, it was just a part of my everyday life because everybody else was sharing the same culture as me. So I spoke Spanish very often and fluently. So because of that, I was an ESL, and my ESL class was fantastic. All of my friends were there, and the teachers who were teaching me were Hispanic. So they were very comfortable speaking to me, and I was able to learn English very well. At the 6th grade, we moved to a conservative town in Montgomery, which is in between Conroe and College Station. And during that time, it was pretty mostly white, conservative area. And so for ESL class, I would remember being in an ESL class that didn't have any Hispanic classmates in there. It actually just had students with learning disabilities. They didn't have any curriculum specifically for me that was ESL. It was mostly just to make sure that I was able to keep up with my classmates, which I was because I spoke fluent English, so I wasn't sure why I was there, but I made the best of it. And because of the area, my friends were mostly all white, so they didn't understand my culture. They called me names like Wiener, wetback, or asked how my parents crossed the river, or asked me to say things in Spanish like dirty words or slang or curse words, which made me very uncomfortable because my parents were really strict. Their parents, who were white conservatives, would ask about my legal status or my parents' legal status. They assumed I lived in the bad part of town when they were going to drop me off, or that my parents were house cleaners or ranch hands, which left me ultimately ashamed of my culture. So I even lied on occasion and said that I was half Mexican or half white, because maybe that would make them like me more. I stopped speaking Spanish completely. I would sometimes make sure that I didn't have an accent when I spoke about certain things, or if I said my parents' hometowns, I wouldn't say Matamoros, I would say Matamoros, in order to talk more like my friends. So this grew, this became a little problematic because my cousins, who were still living in the same area, Greenspoint area, and living the Hispanic cultural life, they started making fun of me too, saying that I was white or I was acting white, or calling me confused because the majority of my friends were white, or they thought that I was better than them because of where I lived, which led to an identity confusion of my own. So because I stopped speaking Spanish, I wasn't able to speak Spanish very well anymore, and I didn't look like a typical my relatives, who were all dark skinned. My mother and father and my sister and my brother were all very dark and still are. And my grandmother is very typical Hispanic Mexican woman, very short, very dark skinned. And so this kind of left me in limbo as like, where do I belong? in society? Do I belong with the Mexicans or do I belong with the whites? So where do I sit? And I had this identity confusion until I graduated high school and I started working in a pharmacy at a hospital that was mostly minorities. And I started to find myself fitting in and becoming more proud of my culture because my coworkers were also in the same situation as me. So I saw my coworkers who spoke Spanish, but not 100%, or they looked like me and they were still proud of their culture, but they didn't speak 100% Spanish, or they uh, were not speaking with an accent, or not dark. And so this made me really happy to see that there were other people just like me. And so I found out that you can be proud of your culture, but you can also be proud of who you've grown to be, and you can be proud of seeing growth in yourself. And now that I'm a mother, I'm starting to notice a little bit more prejudice again, but in a different perspective. I get asked often if I'm a nanny at parks or if my son is mine because he's light skinned and blue eyed and I am not. So you just have to put on a smile and be nice, and of course say no, that this is my son and that we're Mexican.